So we had the Federalist Society under Leonard Leo with the help of the Republican Party so they could stack judges on the Supreme Court of the United States. Doesn't get any more corrupt than that. Oh, yes, it does. Project 2025. And what's the vehicle for that? Donald J. Trump. Not the brightest bulb out of the box, but he's the tool to achieve what's going to end up being, and let's look at it from this point of view, the creation of World War III. And it's World War III because tariffs on your allies and most of the world is economic warfare. Suppression, it's oppression. It's done purposely to exert your will on others that deny them the free will to do what benefits them best and works for us all in the best interest. Dismantling NATO, pulling troops out of Europe. Funny how Russia has no tariff. Meanwhile, Russia's playing their own game, and they're using the tool. I'm reverting back to DJT. Trump syndrome is a disease, but it afflicts the commander in thievery, nobody else. It's only projected to others, but you got to look at the source. Donald John Trump. This guy, that guy. There was actually a show on TV called That Girl, Marlo Thomas. But now we've got that guy, Donald J. Trump, egomaniac. Matter of fact, he's building statues. He wants to go down in history as the most powerful man in the American Republic in 250 years, a functioning illiterate that has clogged up the Strait of Hormuz, created an energy crisis around the world, a food famine on its way, alienated everybody for his benefit. And when are you going to wake up for? Proof's here. Now watch what happens here. Middle East. This is what happened in the Middle East.
Real sense. They were reliant on Big Brother for security. And when push came to shove, it was the Saudis who were really calling the shots. Qatar could have just lived with that reality. It's what their fellow emirs in Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates decided to do. Basically accept that they were all a big, happy family of Sunni Arabs and
this is the important thing. He mentions Sunni Arab, but you have a Shiite Arab. And this is where the problem comes into creation, because the Shiite sect of the Muslim faith is firmly entrenched within Iran. Just saying, folks.
That there was more that united them than divided them. Just let the Saudis run the show. Don't rock the boat. Just sit there quietly and be rich. But in 1995, Khalifa did something that no Qatari emir should ever do, and went on holiday to Switzerland. His son Hamad saw an opportunity to take a leaf out of his dad's book.
Sheikh Hamid bin Khalifa Al Thani seized power from his father in a palace coup.
The thing was, the new emir, Hamad, wanted to exercise more autonomy over Qatar's foreign affairs than his father had. This displeased Qatar's big brother, and in case you've forgotten,
Big Brother is Saudi Arabia.
The new emir wasn't willing to accept Saudi Arabia's role as the regional superpower, so Saudi Arabia tried to get rid of him. The Saudi counter-coup failed, potentially because Hamad refused to go on holiday, but it left him in a tricky position, wedged between a pushy big brother to the south and something even scarier to the north.
The only real threat to the development programs of the ruling family would appear to be Islamic fundamentalism along the lines of the Iran model.
Iran. While Saudi Arabia might see the Qataris as a little brother, they were at least from the same family. Iran is extremely different in almost every way. Different ethnicity, different language, different religion, Shia instead of Sunni Islam, and a totally different regime. A fundamentalist theocracy that had overthrown their monarch in a violent revolution. Qatar would need to find a bigger, scarier friend, and so they went to the biggest and scariest friend there is.
My honor to welcome.
Oh, I should add, you've seen the clip of the 1979 Iranian Revolution, which put Khomeini in power. But back in 1953, you actually had a democracy forming under the Shah of Iran, which went against the power of the Shah of Iran, but it was coming. Muqaddam, Muhammad, had actually a democracy forming to rule by democracy in Iran. But, this is the big but, B-U-T, not B-U-T-T, but maybe it is B-U-T-T. America and Britain were worried about oil dominance, losing their oil because of the wars. British Petroleum was there, BP, British interests. So America and Britain together funded a coup d'etat in 1953 to overthrow the democratic government that was just forming so that they could put the Shah back into position of power. During the Shah's reign of oppression and suppression, he finally realized towards the end of his term before the revolution, he was alienating the people, so he finally freed from the prisons his opposition. Imagine that, opposition, being freed from jail. But it was too late. Khomeini came back and took over, and that's how you have the position you have Iran in now. Full stop. Created by the Americans. You don't blame everybody else for their creations, but they created it. And you need to know that.
The Emir of Qatar to the Oval Office.
I'm pretty sure George W. Bush just called him the Emir of Gutter, but anyway.
So, Your Highness, it's such an honor to have you here. And I welcome you, and I want to thank you for your friendship.
To secure this new friendship, Hamad agreed to host an enormous American airbase in his country.
It's one of the most state-of-the-art ones that you'll find in the region.
And to say thanks, the US moved its regional base of operations to Qatar ahead of the invasion of Iraq in 2003.
This is CENTCOM, the US military's central command, airlifted from Florida, air-conditioned against the blinding desert heat.
As a result, Qatar became the epicenter of the US military's operations in the Middle East.
We're here with permission of the Qatars, and we're doing our best to be good guests.
Luring the Americans gave his tiny country a powerful protector against at times aggressive neighbours.
But it wasn't just about demonstrating military strength and bringing in guys with big guns. Hamad wanted to show that Qatar was allied to the West in ideological ways as well. So he
started democratic reforms, then spent millions setting up Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the World News from Al Jazeera and the very first programme live from our Doha News headquarters here in the heart of the Middle East.
By advocating for a freer press in a region where that's not really a thing, Al Jazeera became both a thorn in the side of authoritarian regimes and the most important platform for those regimes to communicate with the wider world.
Just about every government in the region has, for a time, closed Al Jazeera's bureau. Some have withdrawn ambassadors from Qatar in protest. But today, even the toughest Arab leaders have to deal with Al Jazeera because it speaks to the people.
So Qatar has become the region's US military base and centre of information. But for Hamad, that wasn't enough.
Fly to over 80 destinations on board one of the world's youngest fleets. Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
He dumped investment into Qatar Airways, hoping to turn the Qatari capital Doha into a global business travel hub.
Halfway to anywhere, with plenty of time to spare. The Qatar Airways Premium Terminal in Doha. 5-star service for first and business class passengers.
And he spent money trying to get people to actually leave the airport and see the country instead of just flying through.
The winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
Hamad basically bought the FIFA World Cup only 50 years after football was first seen in his country. Then he spent more money on it than every other World Cup in history combined.
Qatar, which is not even a fifth of the size of Tasmania, is about to become the first Middle Eastern nation to host a World Cup.
But hosting the World Cup wasn't just about football. Qatar wanted to be the place where the world gathered, where people with nothing in common could come together. During the tournament, Iran played against its greatest enemy, the United States.
Whenever these two teams play anywhere in any competition, it brings with it history, it brings with it culture, it brings with it politics.
We talked in last week's episode about how important it is to build trust and credibility when you're trying to negotiate with your enemies. Qatar decided to try and be the place where that trust was brokered.
Senior Taliban leaders are in Qatar for peace talks with US officials.
Qatar welcomed not only the US military to its territory, but the Taliban.
We are prepared to engage the Taliban through a negotiations office in Doha.
With implicit Western backing, Qatar hosted officers of the Taliban, financiers of Al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, and rebel factions from all over Africa. All of this just a few kilometres from the regional headquarters of US Central Command. It is a very small country after all. Now, not everyone was a fan of this it's a small world style politics, and Qatar was publicly criticised for trying to bring these groups together, particularly by Israel and its supporters.
It is quite strange that the Emir of Qatar should take sides with Hamas.
I blame Qatar, that very rich emirate that's been pouring money into the hands of Hamas.
Despite publicly disagreeing with what Qatar was doing, behind the scenes, the Israeli government under Benjamin Netanyahu was supportive of it.
Netanyahu allowed Qatar to give massive amounts of cash to Hamas in Gaza.
Qatar electronically transfers cash to Israel. That cash is then physically carried over the border by UN officials and by Israeli officials into Gaza.
It was a divide and...
So you just witnessed that. Israel, under Netanyahu, got money from the Middle East, Qatar, and gave it to Hamas. The whole reason and the purpose why Netanyahu financed Hamas, can you imagine that? The Israeli Prime Minister financed Hamas so that he could create Hamas as a wedge between the Palestinian organization in place. He'll do anything and everything to get rid of the Palestinians. And he did it by financing Hamas. He did that willingly. He did that as a strategy, but it reared an ugly head he didn't expect. But he created that issue. You have to understand, under Netanyahu, that is a very extreme Zionist movement. And this extreme Zionist movement started warring constantly since 1938 and the start of the Arab War at that time. And they've had dirty hands thereafter. They've been seizing land by war, not through negotiation in order to create a peaceful, harmonious environment, but by force and seizing land and international criminal activity. Just saying.
Conquer strategy, with Netanyahu hoping Hamas would weaken the more moderate Palestinian Authority.
We did everything in order to make sure that Hamas will go on controlling Gaza and Palestinian Authority will control the West Bank, so they will fight each other.
So there's money flowing in all sorts of directions for all sorts of reasons, and Qatar wanted to be at the centre of it. Having a diplomatic and financial relationship with everybody means nobody will want to attack you. Simple. Over the last 50 years, Qatar has grown from being a strange, barren peninsula with no fun facts, to being home to the richest citizen population on Earth, to being the centre of an enormous, intricate spiderweb which stretched into the business, economic, journalistic, tourism, cultural, energy, and political worlds. But Hamad, and after his abdication in 2013, his son Tamim, didn't do all this for fun, or for ego, or for glory. It was a long-term strategy of making Qatar a significant player in world affairs. If they were at the centre of the web, they would be too important to mess with. It was a rational strategy, formed during an era where rational people ran the world. Their refusal to just sit there and be rich may have made Saudi Arabia grumpy, but what was Saudi Arabia going to do about it? Qatar had made itself too important. The strategy was all working very well until around May 2017, when there were hints that the era of rational strategy may be coming to an end.
From bagpipes to men on horseback, Saudi Arabia...
Oh no, rational common sense is going out the window, and when does that start? President Donald Trump, term 1. Unbelievable. The Russian hoax is not a hoax, folks. I personally witnessed how the Russian hoax supported Donald Trump and Jared Kushner's family at all.
Turned up the pomp for Donald Trump's first foreign visit.
The new US President Donald Trump was invited to the Saudi capital Riyadh to dance with swords and join the Saudi King Salman in laying his hands upon a glowing orb. It was a surprising destination for Trump's first foreign trip as president.
Donald Trump has been welcomed to Saudi Arabia with open arms, despite his campaign rhetoric depicting the Saudis as women-hating gay killers and promising a ban on Muslim travel.
Before he left, the Saudis agreed to a massive trade and weapons deal.
Around $147 billion in US arms sales to Saudi Arabia and $270 billion in other trade.
2 weeks after Trump's visit, the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered an extraordinary military operation against Qatar.
Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain imposed an aggressive blockade on Qatar.
Land, air and sea routes in and out of Qatar were blocked.
The 4 blockade countries allege Qatar used its wealth to fund extremist groups linked to Iran.
They demanded that Qatar decrease their diplomatic and military engagement with Iran and Turkey, and that they kick terrorist groups out of their country, and
the closure of its government-funded broadcaster Al Jazeera.
The US...
You notice how he said they wanted to curtail Qatar's relationship with Iran, but also Turkey. Erdogan's got a play in all this stuff as well. You don't realize. As a matter of fact, the $400 million jet that was given to Trump, a sister ship that was also another albatross in the Middle East because of the cost, was given to Erdogan of Turkey before Trump got his big jumbo jet.
Military and State Department were shocked.
The US has 10,000 troops at a critical airbase in Qatar. American diplomats rushed to stop any fallout.
While the Clinton, Bush and Obama administrations had seen Qatar as an ally, this time around the vibe from the White House was very different.
The US president even took credit for the crackdown on Qatar, tweeting, "Perhaps this will be the beginning of the end to the horror of terrorism."
I've heard reports that President Trump didn't even realize that the United States had a base within Qatar, which is pretty alarming.
Trump not knowing that a major base, CENTCOM, for all operations in the Middle East was based in Qatar. Trump did not know that. There's a lot Trump doesn't know. As a matter of fact, if you don't get his attention on a daily basis and remind him of his obligations and what he's agreed to, he just moves on to the next shiny object. That's just the nature of the beast.
It turns out hosting a US military headquarters isn't a great insurance policy if the US president doesn't know it exists. Thankfully, Trump had some people in his cabinet who were aware of the significance of Qatar.
We call on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt to ease the blockade against Qatar.
A group of Trump cabinet officials, informally referred to as the Axis of Adults, basically ignored his instructions and shored up the relationship with Qatar.
The blockade is also impairing U.S. and other international business activities in the region. The blockade is hindering U.S. military actions in the region and the campaign.
So what they're trying to say here right now is that Rex Tillerson, John Kelly, and Mad Dog Mathis had to spring into action to untangle the mess that Donald Trump created. Could have been a lot worse during Trump 1, but now you're in Trump 2. Don't know why you did it. You just love pain and suffering. The master Trump of playing villain, victim, and hero. Meanwhile, guy's just like a squirrel chasing nuts and burying them in a park and in tree trunks. You invite him back in for a second run. Just like, why would you give a 12-year-old the keys to a brand new Corvette? You think that's wise? Well, that's what you've done with the United States of America with this guy Trump. Economic warfare against every ally. A real war in the Middle East that's creating an energy and food famine. And he blames everybody else for it because he is the genius. And it's really as simple as that, folks.
Against ISIS.
Eventually, the blockade was eased and officially ended in the early months of the Biden administration. Qatar didn't cave in to any of the Saudi demands. they survived the blockade with their strategy intact, and their importance as a location for resolving disputes between enemies only increased. Following the October 7 attacks by Hamas on Israel, Qatar was the only mediator able to get both sides to the table for ceasefire and hostage release negotiations.
With officials in Doha insisting talks can continue if both Israel and Hamas show a willingness to negotiate in good faith.
In a world ruled by rational people, you need a safe place for those people to be able to talk to each other while they sort out key differences. Somewhere bitter enemies can come and sit at a table and try and find common ground without worrying they're going to get poisoned or stabbed in the middle of the night. Qatar was that place. But then Donald Trump returned to the White House and things started changing.
Well, there you go. Now you witnessed it. I don't know why you really lived it. The American people, you lived it. Trump won, now Trump too. But Trump won, ended up leaving with a situation, a worldwide pandemic that was improperly dealt with. But because of the money that was created to help citizens get by, it created a worldwide inflation spike, which could not be avoided. But that was the benevolent thing to do. But yet you blamed that inflation on the next guy that bailed you out of the issue, that created some semblance of rationale, undid the mess, and started re-putting things together. Sleepy Joe Biden. And then you blame him for everything that Donald Trump created, but the pandemic was a natural disaster. And that's what you have to understand, and that's what you failed to recognize. And the implication of that natural disaster and the remedies to keep people fed and housed created an inflation spike. It couldn't be avoided. But what do? You put chaos in power again. Now he's learned because, he spent his whole life a wannabe gangster, and he wants to rule. That's all he wants to do. He doesn't care about the people. He's not serving anybody but himself first and foremost. Make a big stink out of Burisma and $50,000 a month going to the son of Biden, which really was a non sequitur because it affected nothing. Yet this guy, Trump, over $6.5 billion in his second term here. First year. That's not including Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., and Jared Kushner. What have they benefited? They have used the power of their father-in-law and father to influence deals around the world for the benefit of their family. And that's the reality. That's the reality today with Michael J.
A brazen attack in Qatar's capital.
Cheers.
Israeli forces targeting Hamas's political headquarters in a residential area of Doha.
Decades spent shoring up their position as an important ally of the West had failed to protect Qatar from Israeli airstrikes.
Hamas's political leadership had reportedly gathered in Doha to discuss the latest US.
So you have to ask this question. How does Israel, which did not exist before 1947, all of a sudden become financed by the United States of America to actually create World War III in the Middle East, financed by America? And look at what's happening between Trump and Israel in the Middle East and what it's creating as a problem for the world. All financed by the American people. And the American people? Is this what you signed up for? Pain and suffering? Doesn't have to be that way, but for some reason you put these demagogues in power that do not care about the value of a human life. All they care about is their own self-enrichment. And you acquiesce to these monsters. Amazing.
Proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza.
It wasn't the first time that Hamas's leadership had been in Qatar to talk with the Americans and Israelis, but Bibi Netanyahu saw an opportunity this time to strike without any fear of ramifications.
These are the same terrorists who planned, terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th.
No. Benjamin Netanyahu financed Hamas. That is the reality. Benjamin Netanyahu and his government financed Hamas because they wanted Hamas to take over and get rid of the Palestinian situation and pit Gaza against the West Bank. And that's the reality. That is the truth.
Qatari government called it state terrorism. Any other US president would have been furious. Donald Trump, though...
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it.
Not jazzed. Not psyched about it. There was no condemnation of Israel. No access of adults to give Israel a rap on the knuckles and tell them to stop. In fact, when Netanyahu suggested just a few months later that it might be a good idea to attack Iran during peace negotiations with the US, Trump joined in.
The Israeli-US joint strikes began in broad daylight, hitting multiple Iranian cities, including the capital.
Iran responded with fury, firing missiles at anyone within reach.
For hours, missiles crisscrossed Middle Eastern skies. As warning sirens blared, Israelis ran for cover. Missiles were also fired.
So there you go. Now you know how everything unfolded in the Middle East. And who do you want to blame for this now? Who are you going to blame? Who are you going to blame? So you can make a choice. Why do you subscribe to all this pain and suffering, harming people? Like a human life, it doesn't matter. Human lives are priceless. And to use judgment to think that one type of human life is better than another type of human life, you really have to question the logic and where that's coming from. So you can eliminate pain and suffering right now. You can start by being kind to yourself, but being benevolent, harmonious to your neighbors, your family, and everyone else. We can live in abundance, or you can live in pain and suffering. And people will say to you, well, utopia does not exist. Life is what you create. You can create pain and suffering, or you can create a life of love and abundance. And this is really as simple as it is. And all you need to do is make the choice here, now, and today. And it requires changing your leaders and making sure they understand your desires. Because pain and suffering for anybody, not something that I would want, but some people are masochists, but it makes no sense. You really have to question where that thought process originates and where it comes from. Maybe it's from a bygone era that you haven't learned to let go of yet. So let go of the pain and suffering, learn to be benevolent, live in harmony and abundance, and everything will change. Just got to take that first step. You can take that step now. Sending love and peace to everyone. Yeah.